So just a couple quick things to note. So Paul is going to lead us in a study on capital virtues, and I think, as we all know, it's going to be amazing because it's Paul. And then Amy Louise has developed a amazing study on prayer for during Lent that will kind of dovetail Reverend Kathy's focus in the Sunday forums. So I think we're going to have a beautiful next couple of months. And I also wanted to, and we can bring it up at the end if somebody will remind me, but I didn't want to forget. We need to hold Kim QR in prayer because she is going to be a speaker at the Sunday Forum this Sunday. So she's going to share her experience on how, it only takes a spark. So I think, Kim, you're going to talk about community. So,
Great.
Yeah, but hold her in prayer because I'm sure there's a little bit of prep happening. All right, Paul, do you want to take it away?
Well, I want to start by complaining that I feel totally unprepared for this one. The last one, I at least had a vague idea of what I was talking about. Virtue was way beyond my abilities, but we'll do the best we can. And as long as everybody chips in, we'll stumble through for an hour at a time, I think, okay. But I'm counting on everybody to bail me out.
Paul, I heard patience is a virtue, so
Yeah.
we'll start there.
Yep. Well, I had a lot of pictures to share to start with. So Maria, if you can go ahead and set up the screen sharing, we can start with our first picture.
Yep.
I didn't know how to introduce the concept of virtue. And then suddenly I came across this cartoon from Calvin and Hobbes, and I thought, that's it, that's perfect. So we'll give you a chance to admire the Calvin and Hobbes cartoon. I hope.
Yeah, no, it's coming up. It's coming up. I have to move it over. It's coming up on my external monitor. So I'm going to just unplug that so that stops happening. And now it'll come up on this monitor. Here we go. Okay. I'm not sure I can blow that up any, Paul.
Well, I don't know if you can all see it on your monitors, so I'll, and I can't see it. I can't read.
Can anybody see it on the monitor?
I can see it, but I can't read it.
Yeah.
Well, I might be able to.
Anyway, you see Calvin there. I assume all of you are familiar with Calvin and Hobbes. And so in the first one, he's chatting with Calvin and Hobbes are chatting. He says, I'm going to pay Susie with a great, a big wide snowball. And then Hobbes says, some philosophers say that true happiness comes from living a life of virtue. And then the rest of the pictures, I think, explain themselves. Calvin reforms. He cleans up his room. He does his homework. He makes a Valentine card for his mother. He shovels the sidewalk for his dad. He eats his vegetables. He takes out the garbage. He walks away after a day of virtue. And clearly, it doesn't really do the job. So he goes back out and makes his big snowball and pastes Susie. And then as he's walking away, he says, someday I'll write my own philosophy book. And Hobbes says, virtue needs some cheaper thrills.
Hey, Maria, if you look down at the bottom, there's a magnifying glass with a plus on it. Over on the right. On the right.
I'm on the right, the magnifying glass.
There's it says
on the bottom.
100% and a magnifying glass, or maybe I'm looking at Zoom. No,
Yeah, it's a plus. One line up. Yeah, right there.
Yeah,
That
if you
Remote
punch,
control?
hit the plus and see if that makes any difference.
I'm not on a plus.
Oh, well.
Where do you guys see a plus? This says remote control for me.
we see a
It's right underneath.
There.
Well, there we go. I can just do it with my mouse.
Right. Yeah.
ta-da. Okay.
Great.
Anyway, I think most of us like Calvin and Hobbes, so I couldn't think of a better way to start.
Yes.
Wasn't that number 2 as well?
Leave that first one up for a minute.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's okay. It's no big difference. It's fine if you go to the next one, but that's.
Oops, that's the, okay, here we go.
Yeah, you're gonna need to blow that one up too. You may as well blow it up right now and let everybody enjoy it. Oh,
There,
never mind.
Good.
Okay. So anyway, to be candid with you, we were all chatting about what are we going to do for 5 weeks before Len gets here. We had this spectacular class coming up about prayer, and I was out cruising the web and discovered that there was a nice little video series about actually it's the card. I should have made clear. It's the cardinal virtues, not the capital virtues.
Oh, okay, thank you. I've never heard of capital virtues.
There are capital virtues too. I'll get to that in just a minute. But anyway, for the next 4 weeks, we'll start with a little video from a Catholic priest explaining each week one of the so-called cardinal virtues, and then we'll talk about them, I hope. But just by way of introduction to the topic, not surprisingly, the Christian theologians and divines over the centuries have thought and written a great deal about virtue. And the church tradition has come to focus on 2 sets of 7. The first ones, the ones I'm not going to talk about, are the capital virtues. They're according to, this was defined by Pope Gregory I about the year 500. In some of his writing, he talks about the 7 capital virtues, and I'll read the list off for you just so you'll recognize them. But what they are is the 7 capital virtues balance the 7 deadly sins, sort of the opposite of the sin. So the 7 capital virtues are chastity, which is paired with lust, which is obviously a vice; temperance, which is paired with gluttony, which is obviously a vice; charity, which is paired with greed; diligence, which is compared with sloth; patience, which is compared with envy; kindness, which is compared to wrath; and humility. And I forget what humility is balanced by, but
Pride, right?
Yeah, it must be pride. Yeah. Good to know you're all paying attention. But then there are also what are called the 7 heavenly virtues, which also were developed in antiquity. And of the 7 heavenly virtues, 3 of them are called the theological virtues, and they are defined in St. Paul's letter to Corinthians, which you all know, probably some of you even had read at your wedding. The theological virtues are faith, hope, and love, or charity. And that comes from chapter 13, line 13 of 1 Corinthians. But paired with those are what the church has long recognized as the 7 cardinal virtues, which we'll be discussing in the subsequent weeks: prudence, justice, temperance, and courage. And these actually go back to Plato and Aristotle. They long antedate Christianity, and they were recognized throughout the philosophical community of the ancient world as cardinal virtues. The term cardinal was first used by a 4th century theologian named Ambrose. You probably recognize the name, who defined them as temperance, justice, prudence, and fortitude. And then St. Augustine of Hippo started using that terminology too. And they remain, I guess they sort of officially defined that way by the Catholic Church, where they are described as the human virtues. If you went through a Catholic education, you probably encountered them in the Catechism. And they're also so defined in the, I looked it up, but I don't have a quotation from it. There is an official Episcopalian dictionary that's approved, that's theologically approved, and it defines these cardinal virtues in the same terms. Now, what's the difference between the two? Well, the difference traditionally is understood to be that the cardinal virtues and the theological virtues are different in that the cardinal virtues are not accessible to human, the theological virtues, faith, hope, and charity, we can't attain ourselves. We need the help of God for that. Whereas the cardinal virtues, the four virtues of prudence, justice, temperance, and courage, are things that we can attain our own without divine assistance.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah,
So was it just the four cardinal that Plato and Aristotle debated?
Yes.
Or did it also, not, so they
they
didn't have-
wrote, they wrote extensively. And I think it's Plato first got the idea that any other virtue you can think of kind of fits in under one of these four cardinal virtues.
Okay, so then they didn't
So
talk
these
about
are kind of master virtues and others descend from them.
but they didn't talk about the three theological virtues.
No, they did not at all. That's purely Christian.
Is that, okay, that's what I thought, okay. And when you say antiquity, what is that term, what is that? Is that pre-1000?
I guess for me, I would say, well, this goes back to freshman world history. I would say antiquity ended in 476 AD. That's when the last Roman emperor in the West was deposed. So traditionally, historians talk about the ancient world up to roughly 500 AD, and then the Middle Ages from about 500 to 1500, and then the modern world from 1500 forward. Particularly in the modern world, you think about all things happened around 1500. Columbus discovered America, Gutenberg invented printing, gunpowder was introduced, so forth and so on. There are lots of things around 1500 that changed the world forever.
Awesome, thank you.
And the Middle Ages really begin when Christianity becomes the only tolerated religion.
That was in 500?
Yeah, roughly. I think the last, again, I'm not certain the date, I'd have to look it up, but it's sometime in the 470s that the Emperor Theodosius makes it a crime not to be a Christian, which really changes the nature of Christianity when it goes from being a persecuted religion to being a religion that persecutes other religions. Really.
Yeah.
So show us the second cartoon now, if you can,
Uh-huh.
because I think in some ways it sort of brings home this point. Great, that's perfect. Go back down one. I think can everybody read that okay?
Yeah.
See the whole thing.
And once again, we identify with Calvin, I think, pretty easily here. But the point he's making here is that the kind of classic virtues are ones that are a product of your life. You can be, maybe if he had been raised in a better environment, he would have had the cardinal virtues, but the divine virtues come only from God. So anyway, for what that's worth, I thought it was a good way as anyways making the distinction. So, you want to go ahead and give me the next picture, which is the movie Easy Virtue. I must say, until I started doing it, I did not know this movie exists. I don't know if any of you ever saw it.
No.
Well, it's got some pretty reputable people in it, but I'd never heard of it, so it must have come and gone pretty quickly. But anyway, just so talking a little more generally about virtue and what the word means and how amorphous it is and how abstract I think it is to try to get your hands on it. So I thought before we, the next 4 weeks, we'll talk about the so-called cardinal virtues. Today, I thought we'd just talk about virtue more generally. And, I started, like anybody would, I think, with the dictionary. And it won't surprise you know that virtue is a noun. And the dictionary I used offered 4 definitions. 1, behavior showing high moral standards, so that one can be a paragon of virtue because of your behavior. A quality considered morally good in a person's, as in patience, is a virtue. A good quality of a thing. So, for example, Paul might brag about the virtues of his new car. And probably the most old-fashioned, but and sexist and politically incorrect and all that, but that's what the picture is talking about, is that it can also mean female virginity or chastity, as in a woman of easy virtue. So you give me the next picture.
Makes me want to see that movie.
Ah! So it won't surprise you to know that virtue is derived from Latin word virtue, which in turn was derived from the god virtue. And here is the god virtue. Linguistically, it died from the word for men, vir, as in virile. So it refers initially to the excellent qualities of men, including strength, valor, and moral rectitude. Obviously, we have a less sexist definition of it now, but that's where it comes from. That's the etymology of the word, if you're into it. Another thing I pointed out is how easily we use the term in peculiar ways. When we say by virtue of something, what we're saying is they achieve something by virtue of, for example, greater military strength, or by virtue of force of arms. And I have here a picture, and the next one is give us Abraham Lincoln, where he uses the phrase in the Emancipation Proclamation.
Where's my number 5?
Black, the one, it's not helping to point to it.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah, there we are. So what he's saying, by the virtue of the power invested in me by the Constitution, blah, 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 blah. And of course, this is one of the most powerful exercises of executive authority in American history. And I'm not even certain people agree he had that authority, but during the war, nobody was rude enough to ask for the court to reverse it. But anyway, by virtue of your strength, by virtue of your beauty, whatever, you can do certain things. We also talk about making a virtue of something. So give me the next dark one. It's Chaucer. Who I think was probably the first writer known to have used making a virtue of necessity. But we've all, like the old saying, when life gives you a lemon, make lemonade. You can make a virtue of necessity. And next, a very contemporary one. If you'll give me the
Which one?
the headset.
That's right. The one I couldn't figure out what it was.
Well, maybe I shouldn't have identified what it is to see if everybody recognizes it. But this is what is now, you can buy these. This is a virtual reality headset, so that you put it on and all you see is the screen in front of you, and the earphones control the sound you hear. And theoretically, you're transported from reality to virtual reality. I've never done this. Has any of you ever done it? I have. What was it like?
It's a pretty immersive experience. I think mine was music and flowers it was something in New York City in a museum, and it was very cool.
Well, that was very tame. I was helping a colleague with a study. He studies stuttering, so I was like an easy mark for that. And he had monsters like attacking me, like they would run at me because he's trying to make me stutter. I mean, that's what he's trying to make that work for a type of therapy. I'm a bit suspect, but it was quite real. To have these
yes.
coming toward me. Yeah, not pleasant.
Huh. Wait, did you also have sound?
Oh yes, it was sound, and I started trying to like physically protect myself.
Wow.
I don't think that the research board would approve that. I'm on the board, so I don't know. I'm still on the fence.
Yes. Okay, well, enough about virtual reality. I guess it's something we all have to look forward to. Actually, one of my favorite uses of the term these days is virtue signaling. And I don't know how you feel about virtue signaling, but you know, when I walk down the street and I see somebody has a big poster up that says something like Black Lives Matter or you know, we don't waste energy here or something like that, I always have very mixed feelings about whether I should, you know, appreciate their self-righteousness or be off. But give me there's a cartoon now, Maria.
The cartoon, okay.
Yeah. One of my favorite cartoonists.
More or this one?
Yep,
More
that's
organic?
it.
Oops.
Hamilton.
Yes. Hamilton does all his cartoons in the New Yorker magazine. And I thought it just sort of captures something we've all encountered, I think. So it can, if not on organic, on something else.
I don't get it.
Well, maybe it's not as funny as I think it is. They just, you know, they're it's not merely that they lead an organic virtuous, the people who are saying goodbye, but that they're kind of self-righteous about it and are trying to convey their superiority by I'm trying to think of, you know,
Well, it kind of reminds me of the a humorous cartoon that it showed two very farmer-looking couple at a who were running a vegetable stand along the side of the road, and the caption said, if they ask if it's organic, say yes. And you know, and that's another kind of thing. And then one other cartoon was that it reminds me of is one where the caption says, yes, and you know, we really are back to nature because the meat we're serving tonight we killed in our backyard. And you know, it's one thing to grow your vegetables, but somehow the idea that you're going to slaughter the food so that you can be really, you know, I mean, this one
are
reminds
the
me.
rest of you, I'm just curious, I was very familiar with the term virtue signaling. Is that a new term to the rest of you? Any of you ever heard that term before?
I don't know
I
what
have
you
not.
mean. No.
I have
Oh,
not.
I'm very familiar with it, and I frequently use it because people that tell you what good things they're doing, to me, that's just virtue signaling.
Yeah.
I think of you should not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
Yeah.
So
I
you
think
don't
that it may be particularly in liberal arts colleges where this is more pervasive, you know, where everybody on campus is, you know, wearing the right kind of clothes and wearing the right political buttons and has the right badges on their bumper stickers and things like that. And so maybe I was oversensitive to it. Anyway, give me the remaining pictures just because I wanted to wrap up with whether or not we know what virtue is or can define it. We all know it's something that it's good to have. And so I wanted to show you a number of commodities you can buy with the term, with the virtue in their title. There's a hand lotion.
I think I have it all in a PowerPoint. Oh,
Great.
yeah.
So there's actually a virtue bar and restaurant. I looked at this menu. It didn't look all that virtuous to me. There's a car salesman or a car distributor somewhere that uses virtue as its brand name, which I thought was fun. There was I like Spirits of Virtue because it's a whiskey manufacturer. The idea of virtuous spirits is was good. And then I don't know if you can see virtue on the two, but there were a lot of cosmetics that used that name in one way or another. So, okay, well, that's it for the pictures. So let's go back to looking at everybody a little bit more easily. So I say next week we'll turn about each of the cardinal virtues in turn. But I thought today we could explain, and this is where I hope everybody will play. I have, there could be individual virtues. There can be collective virtues, that is, a community can have a set of virtues, or there can be an institution that's virtuous by nature, and others that we don't think of as virtuous. And so I have a series of questions that I guess I'd like to deal with each one in return. So I'm going to give you a thought question, and I will go first just to illustrate what I have in mind. But originally I thought I'd let you all tell us what your best virtue was, but I thought that was a little too personal.
That was virtue signaling.
Yes, that would be virtue signaling. So, instead, what I want you to do is, whether you're married or not, or, whatever your personal situation, there's somebody in the world you love.
Mhm.
And almost surely that person has a virtue, has many virtues. But what I want to ask, and these are non-theological now, I don't want to know whether they're good Christians. I want to know in other terms, what is the defining virtue? What is the great virtue? What is it? I see a hand raised, but let me just finish the question before I do. Of a person you love. And you want to go ahead and go first? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, go first.
My husband is the kindest person I know. And I really mean that. He is such a kind person that I am still shocked by it at times. So,
Oh,
Aww.
this is putting a lot of pressure on people now. I think maybe we should better do somebody who doesn't have a spouse in the room. Jan, let's try you. What can you come up with?
I guess I would have to say the demonstrated love that my kids have returned to me.
Mhm.
They recognize, I think, the love that we spent on them and what we gave them to raise them up. And I lost Mary, so they are taking care of me, and I just can't explain how, I feel like it's undeserved, but they have just floored me with that return of love.
Great. I would even, if you'll allow me to elaborate a little further there, it's easy what you're illustrating very nicely is the way, since love is one of the Christian virtues, how the other virtues, that their love for you leads to generosity, to kindness, to thoughtfulness, to affection, all of these other virtues that are dependent on the love, but can be distinguished from it. So that's great. So I just keep going around. Maria, let's just go around here.
Well, you didn't give yours. I still haven't figured
Oh,
out.
I thought I was off the hook.
No, I'm still thinking about mine.
I'm not in the same room, but Kay's just in the room next door. So it won't surprise you to know that the love person actually, I got to mention one. I got to cheat and say too, I have a 5-year-old grandson and he loves to hug me. And boy, I don't know if that's a virtue, but boy, I just, every day when he says goodbye, he lines up about 100 feet away and runs as fast as he can to me and then jumps into my arms. But I will say for the person that's closest to me, Kay, who has, you know, a lot of virtues. The one I'm most grateful for is her capacity for forgiveness. Because I think forgiveness is so hard. And you need it all the time. I do anyway. I do the best I can, but there are times when I say something I should, or I fail to say something I should, and we get mad like all couples do, but you know, we're still working at it 54 years in, and we wouldn't be there without her capacity to forgive. So that's mine. Let's see. Let's do the Uyghurs.
Kim is very kind and very caring. That's what I most like about her.
I would say for David, it's his generosity. He is always giving of his time to me and everybody else.
Of course,
You
I
think
would
that's
tell you that my favorite
Really
virtue of
generous?
myself is my sense of modesty.
Yes, yeah, humility.
You know,
There we go.
I spent most of 2020 and 2021 praying for humility, and every time I thought I was getting good at it, I realized I'm really not. But you think you're good at it, you're not.
That's the reason I do not pray for patience, because God gives me every opportunity to practice it if I do. I mean, I get enough as it is, but
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think going across my screen now, next is Eric Schwartz. You got to turn your mic back on.
Emily's is telling me I don't have to say anything, but but
Nobody gets
see,
off
I've
on
got
this.
two. With Emily, she's just incredibly hardworking, which I believe is a virtue.
I don't know.
But, you know, the other one that I think is equal or maybe better is that she has really goodwill. That's what I appreciate about her. Just today, I was hearing her, you know, taking action at her own risk, going to bat for her colleagues' jobs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those two, hardworking and has goodwill.
But sometimes grumpy. So
Well, I didn't ask for vices. You know, we've got those two.
Next time.
That'll be
That's
another
next lesson.
Maybe we'll do the 7 deadly sins at some point. That'll be really gruesome. All right. Well, the Phillips are up next on my screen. So
Nancy is very caring and will go to bat for people who don't have a voice or need help. That is one of her best virtues. One of many.
Oh gosh, thanks.
okay, it's your turn.
Kevin is I'd say like Eric said about Amy Louise, an incredibly hard worker, very dedicated to not only to our family, but to a lot of people out in the world who are hurting and need help.
Okay, let's do the Mike and Lori Mahaffey next.
Okay. Mike has many virtues, but I think the one I want to highlight tonight is his diligence. Mike is an engineer, and you don't quit till the job is done. You don't quit when it's 5 o'clock. You quit when it's done. And we have this unusual weather coming up, and Mike has already been working almost all day long to prepare our home for the unusual weather coming up, which neither one of us likes. But 2 years ago, when that first bad freeze happened, Mike said, in the middle of the power outage, before the water outage, we are getting a generator. And I said, thank you, dear. And he didn't stop until we had a generator. It took several months, and it took many visits from the city of Austin inspector and all of that stuff. But anyway, his willingness to see a job through, which sometimes I'm impatient and I just drop out and I don't want to handle it, but he's diligent and he'll get it done. So that's maybe one of his best virtues, in addition to kindness and a few others. So
Great. Well, what has he got to say?
I don't know. I think he doesn't want to talk.
He has to. No easy outs.
Say something. Want to say something? He's
Like-
going to come over to the, we sit back on the couch and then we walk up to the computer and turn on the voice.
Okay.
Here he
There
comes.
is. Right, there you go. Dear.
Well, you know that Gary P. Nunn song that says, "You asked me what I like about Texas," and it says, "Yeah, I could tell you, but we'd be here all night long." Well, if you ask me what Laurie's virtues are, I could tell you, but we'd be here all night long.
Oh, you're too sweet.
Definitely a good line. That's really impressive. Kay.
I want to mention a couple of things. And one is that I know part of what I think the talk's coming up, and I'm not sure if this is one that Kim is going to be addressing, but Paul is a wonderful mentor, and he also is a wonderfully imaginative cook, and I think I just really enjoy his. He says he doesn't like to travel, but he's coming up with various things that where we might go, what we might do, and so he's just always full of surprises, and I think that's a virtue, to see what can be done and to help somebody see. I sometimes I think he has helped me understand myself sometimes. And I won't say that we don't ever disagree, because sometimes we do, but I also think that that's something that, you know, it keeps you on your toes. If people just don't ever disagree, I think maybe it's because they're not necessarily being honest. I don't think that there is life between two people without some disagreement, whether or not you voice it or not. And so I don't always like being chastised, but I recognize that it's healthy and helpful, and most of the time I say that I'm not being chastised, I'm being helped.
Well, I should have added a sense of humor to your virtues. Kim Hall, are you there? Maybe she's
I
not.
thought she said she could only
I am.
listen.
Yeah.
No, I'm listening. And actually, while I've had this time to, because I've slammed and I had to do some work, but I'm looking at this list of 52 words that are virtues. And I mean, this has been really enlightening to just even think of the word. But what popped out for me is I was trying to think of something that Brian is that I'm not. And I mean, my opinion is that he's consistent. It's consistency, reliable, consistent and reliable. Always, 43 years, I can count on him. And I'm not saying that he can't count on me, but I just don't think I'm consistent. I'm all over the place, but I like that word. I don't know. That one just stands out for me. Consistency. And I think it's important. And I think I'm going to try harder.
Great.
All right.
Okay.
Shall I-
Kim Mayer.
Who?
isn't it Quayer?
Kim. Kim.
Hi, I couldn't hear. And my dogs are acting up on me tonight. Let's see. I'll think of maybe two people. Just two things. My younger daughter, Elise, she just has such a giving heart, and so sensitive, and she's just so sincere in giving. So I just want to think of her. And then I'm gonna throw something. And then dogs are acting
dog.
Yeah. And then y'all haven't met David yet, but we've been dating for quite a while, but he's very, I guess, generous with his time and very helpful to any and everybody, especially to me, helping my parents get to doctor's appointments and just neighbors and anybody without really being asked. So just a very generous, giving person. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
My husband was, I don't know what the word would be, but he took really good care of my mom, and my mom could be really brash, and he handled her like a really gentlemanlike, really measured, always with respect, and she adored him. And she's gone now, but I really like that about him.
Great. I can't resist. So somebody gave me a joke book for Christians. So this is either appropriate or inappropriate, but I can't resist sharing it under the circumstances. The very first joke is that why was Adam the happiest man in the world ever?
He didn't have a mother-in-law.
He didn't have a mother-in-law. Very good. I didn't say it was that good a joke, but you know. All right, Carol, you're up. That's it.
Oh, listening to everybody, I go back to my 4 children. Every single one of them are exceptionally hard workers. Anything that, and they're willing to tackle anything. If it's actual work that they're getting paid for, or if it's just work that needs to be done, or if it's just work for pleasure, they will work to do it the very best they can. And every single one of them are not, none of them are afraid to tackle anything. So I think it's their work ethic is to me one of the best things, other than the fact that they are very they take good care of me. So they're good kids. I'm very proud of them.
Good. Well, thank you, everybody. I have another question
Wait,
now.
I didn't get to go.
Oh, I'm sorry, Maria. I thought we started with you. My mistake.
No, I pushed it back on you and then I missed my turn.
She said she was thinking.
I think for Craig, it's humility. And what I mean by that is Craig is good at so many things. Like he's a pilot. He can fix almost anything around the house. He's an amazing cook. He's very accomplished at work. And yet you don't know any of that. Like he doesn't take pride in any of it. It's just who he is. And as someone who had struggled a lot because I took a lot of pride in my job, it's just very inspirational to see that this man is so accomplished in so many things, but there's no pride there. It's just who he is.
That's great. Yeah.
So,
Wonderful.
anyway.
All right, so I have another question, which we'll wrap up with today. We don't need to take as long, but
Yeah, we might not get through everyone, but we'll see.
Hey, Paul, I'm sorry. Did we hear from David?
No.
you missed somebody. I'm sorry. By all means, yeah, David Gamble.
So I think that the virtues that I am attracted to with my wife are her patience, her honesty, her courage to be honest, especially with me, and her capacity for forgiveness.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so the first time we talked about individual virtues. Now I want us to talk about the virtues of a collectivity or an institution. And we don't need to take as long, but I would appreciate if everybody would take a shot at it if they can. And what I want to ask you is, let me put it to you this way: the church, one of the things that's controversial in American politics is how much financial support the church gets from the government indirectly through, the fact that you can give to the church and it's not taxable, or the fact that ministers don't have to pay income tax on their housing costs, which means that they pay dramatically less income taxes than anybody else in the country. And it's sometimes debated in society, is this appropriate? Why does the church deserve this kind of special treatment? So without making this political, but just I brought those up as illustrations of the issue. What do you think the virtues of the church are? Not Christianity, but the church as an institution. Whether it's St. Luke's, whether it's the Episcopal Church writ large, whether it's the Christian church writ large. What is its virtue as it is, or what are its virtues as an institution?
I would like to comment on that. I think that our churches, synagogues, mosques take care of a lot of people and take the burden off of just the public, the government having to pay for it. And I think our religious organizations have a personal contact with people and can do things for people that a government can't do. And I think that's, and the public, unless you're involved in a religious organization, you're not aware of the things that they actually do. I'm thinking of what, Chris, you know very well what we do at the trailer park for those people there, that they can't get help anywhere else. And so I think a lot of the volunteer work and a lot of actual financial help that religious organizations give, I think is more than worth the so-called tax write-offs that churches have.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Anybody else?
Sure. The church teaches peace and cooperation, forgiveness, reconciliation. I mean, without that, you've got a bunch of powerful people bashing each other over the head.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to object to your characterization that being exempted from taxes is being supported. I mean, being supported by the government would be getting money from them.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think there's a lot to be said for the notion that government takes way too much from us as it is.
Yeah.
So being able to keep a little bit more of it, is special treatment, but I don't think it's a subsidy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I didn't want to politicize I just tried to use that as an illustration of I will agree. I'll just chip in here and say, I mean, for me, you've hit what to me is, I think, the greatest virtue of the church is as an educational institution, as a social grouping that values and embodies and instills virtuous behavior. I don't really expect I know people say if we had good enough high schools, everybody'd be a better citizen or something like that. But I think there's so many kinds of moral education that you get either from your family or from the church that you are not going to get anywhere else. And I think also the church, for me, has always been a place that is constantly both educating and seeking to learn more. It's an institution that seeks to get better. it has aspirations that are far greater than the aspirations of any government or social club or something like that. To me, anyway.
Well, also I think that Carol was mentioning that there are ways that the church and churches and religious communities do things that you're not aware of. And I think, one of the things I know that in the church that we used to go to in Minnesota, it was the biggest Alcoholics Anonymous gathering took place in the church that we went to.
They were not all church members we should have.
No. I said it was the gathering, and I think there are many, and when I vote here, I go to a church. And when I voted in Minnesota, I went to a church. And it wasn't that I went to a church that we would go to, but the church provided a space for the community to use. And I don't know, if they did it, if they got anything for it or not, I don't know that, but it certainly whoever was using it got more than they had put into it in terms of if they had to build a building themselves to put it together. And then just in terms of inspiration, I remember one time taking a class to a church, and the guy that I had asked to be a commentator was just saying, you walk into a soaring space and everybody, teenagers included, quiets down. There's something just about some of the spaces that have been built are beautiful and serve. The historic New England town was built around a church, and that was the gathering place for the community. And now I think part of what we are dealing with is as we're more spread out, churches still serve a community function, but our communities are more widespread, and so and we're not all in the same groups, so it's complicated, but it still is serving a function.
Right. Mike, go ahead.
Yes, I want to echo and elaborate on something that Eric said there. And there's a big difference between taking your money from everyone, sending it to Washington, and then have Washington decide, what's the best thing to do with it. And the nod to the church is, well, we'll leave that money with the church and with the parishioners who donate to it, and let them decide what's the best thing to do with it. So, in world societies, there's, two basic concepts. Either the state is primal or the individual is prime. And the beauty of the Constitution is that it enshrines the individual as prime, not the state. And along with voting and free speech, just the exercise of religion is one of the, primary means by which I think our citizenry maintains the primal status of the individual over the state.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else, or should we wrap it up? I think we got.
I just
Yeah.
want to say something that from my observation and participation in the life of the church, that I think one of the virtues that we have that you may not find so easily in other places is that we are a conduit of compassion.
Yeah.
On any given day, we have had people come into the office who have just lost a loved one. or who are struggling with domestic violence or substance abuse or any number of things. And I think one of the things that we can offer from where we sit in the church as members, as parishioners, as followers of Jesus, is to be a conduit for compassion in a way that many other institutions aren't.
Great. Thank you. Well, Maria, why don't you wrap us up with prayer, and then next week we'll start with the actual official cardinal virtues.
Yes. And one of the things